Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. Coast to Coast, This Week in America. Deployment by Wilfred Zinavage offers a compelling blend of action and adventure drawn from his experiences in the U.S. Navy during the Cold War. Raised on a farm in Baltic, Connecticut near New London, the submarine capital of the world, Wilfred joined the U.S. Navy at 18. Trained as an aviation electronics technician, became an aircrew member and flew on the Navy's first nuclear bomber. Handpicked along with 17 other specialists, he later became one of the Navy's first in-flight technicians on the world record-holding PC-3 aircraft. At the peak of his career, he was involved in several secret projects. He still suffers nightmares from his military experiences. After his 20-year military career, Wilfred retired back to his home with his young family. As a civilian until he retired once again, he held many titles: a first aid instructor, actor, songwriter, biomedical technician, armed nuclear security officer, town selectman, even a write-in candidate for lieutenant governor. He earned a college degree in general studies, lacked 9 credits from becoming an electronic engineer. In his spare time, he became a TV show co-host on public access television, stays active with the Vietnam Veterans of America and the American Legion. Wilfred Zinavage, author of Deployment, joins us on This Week in America. Wilfred, welcome to the program. A pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, it's a joy to speak up and tell my story.
Well, and I'm anxious.
It's not my story, it's the story of many people.
Well, and you do a wonderful job of telling that, and we feel we're like right there with you as you went on this journey, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and look forward to hearing your story. It's all in Wilfred's book, Deployment, information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. What inspired you, first of all, to join the U.S. Navy at age 18? I mentioned you were brought up near Baltic, Connecticut. Did that influence your career?
Okay, well, I graduated when I was in high school. I decided, having been raised on a farm, and I had uncles. They were like my father's. I was born the son of a single mom that never connected again. Family thing, and the father found out she was pregnant and yada yada. But anyhow, they never got together again, which is a sad story in itself. But I decided that I wanted to see the world. I used to read a lot, I still do, and I kept up on current events. And I decided to join because I wanted to see the world and I wanted to fly, because one of my uncles was an aviator. Actually, both of them were. I had 5 uncles and 3 aunts. And listening to their stories, I decided that I wanted to get into the military and join the Navy, because my first uncle there was started out as an enlisted man, and he became an enlisted pilot during World War II. And he was so good at it that Admiral Halsey said he wanted him to be his personal pilot, but he couldn't do it as an enlisted man. So he got promoted, my uncle did, to Lieutenant JG, which was a step above ensign, as Admiral Halsey's personal pilot. And he was an inspiration to his brothers. And there's a whole story there, which I wrote in another book. And I don't want to get into that, but so I wanted to join the Navy, and I wanted to get involved in flying. I enjoyed flying because my uncle did take me up flying when he was on leave, and I enjoyed it. And I wanted to become an aviation guided missileman because I think guided missiles were the big thing at the time. But they had better need for avionics technicians, aviation electronics, avionics for short. So that was my goal. And they sent me to the A School in Memphis, Tennessee, and I had 26 weeks of training there. Then I was sent to a patrol squadron, VP-11, up in Brunswick, Maine. And from there, the adventure began.
And what an amazing story it is. Our guest on the program is Wilfred Zinavage, Zinavage. His website is authorwzinavage.com. You'll find information there on deployment, the other books that we'll talk about briefly as we go through our conversation today. Describe your experiences, if you will, as an aircrew member on the Navy's first nuclear bomber, the P2V-7 Neptune. What was that like?
Okay, first of all, the P2V-7 Neptune was the seventh model of that type of aircraft. It started out as a twin-engine patrol aircraft by the Navy, but the Navy needed a nuclear bomber, and they also needed something to satisfy the need for surveillance and submarine hunting. Basically, they added two jet engines to it, which gave it the capability of carrying a nuclear weapon. And we were trained to load nuclear weapons, and that was the most significant thing we did on deployment, which I mentioned in the book. But in that deployment, a lot of things happened that, I did not expect, no one expected. But when you're an aviator, unusual things happen, and most of them are described in the book. All the events that I wrote about actually did occur, and the Navy wouldn't let me publish it, so I had to go back and rewrite it and call it a work of fiction. But all the events described did happen. And the most significant one, which sticks to me to this day, and just a quick short story here, is the fact that we were trained, we loaded dummy bombs, going through the drill, nuclear weapon loading. But then in Sigonella, Sicily, as the novel describes, we got called in, and what happened afterwards is I had the pleasure of guiding the bomber in over a target, and we dropped a dummy. We thought it was a nuclear bomb. We really did. The way that it's hard to describe it. So I can say I was one of the few people trained and tested to see what would happen, But anyway, I had the pleasure years later of meeting the man that actually pushed the trigger to drop a real bomb, Dutch Van Kirk of the Enola Gay. And we had a good talk, maybe 10 or 15 minutes work. But he looked me in the eye and he said, we did what we had to do. And that has haunted me because I was tested and we did what we had to do. Next.
What a remarkable story. Wilfred Zinavage, our guest on the program, we're talking about his book, Deployment. I'll give you the information where the book's available. Of course, you'll find it at Amazon, the usual places. His website, authorwzinavage.com. All this on our website. Then how did it feel to be handpicked as one of the Navy's first in-flight technicians on the world record-holding P3C aircraft? One distinction after another. What was that like?
Charlie, P3C, Papa 3C. It was the third version of the Orion aircraft, four-engine turboprop. And it was a big leap forward for the ASW community. And it was so sensitive that in the movie entitled The Hunt for Red October, the Navy would only allow a 10-second view of the P3C, or it might have been a P3B at the time. I don't know. But it was the P3, and they did not want the public to know about it. So in the movie, The Hunt for Red October is only shown for 10 seconds. They're the ones that founded the Red October. But anyway, by Tom Clancy. But anyway, the things I got involved in with that were, a lot of them were classified and some secret projects. I got into VX1, which was the epitome, the peak of the career, and all sorts of stories there. But that's later on in life.
Well, and so many great stories, and they come to life, and you feel like you're there with Wilfred and the others that he's with during these journeys. The book is Deployment. You'll find it at Wilfred's website. Can you share any details about the secret projects you were involved in during your military career? I know that's rather sensitive. As you say, the Navy wanted this to be labeled fiction rather than a true story. Anything you can talk about, some of the secret projects?
Well, I can talk about this one now because I was in VX1 and I was handpicked, like I said, to learn about the aircraft, first of all. And that was kind of funny because we didn't know what they were talking about. 18 of us were handpicked out of the aviation community to go into this special program to learn how to become in-flight technicians, to fix the plane in flight. Okay, and we did that. And out of us, like I said, I got into a special project eventually later on, and I learned to go to Vietnam to test this project out. And the project involved the Army and the Air Force. And we had an Air Force colonel that was in fact the Air Force contingent. And our job was to locate artillery pieces. Now, can you imagine doing that from an airplane And the biggest problem they had with the infantry there was the bad guys would fire the artillery piece, and of course they located this by sound, whatever means, and they'd fire back. But guess what? The artillery piece wasn't moved there. It wasn't there. The Viet Cong actually physically moved it over just maybe 100 or 200 yards away from its original location, and created havoc.
Yes.
So our mission was to go there and prove this thing in combat. But like a incurious mind that I have, I asked the colonel, "Hey, appreciate you guys being with us to protect us, because we're low and slow." And he says, "Son," he says, "whatever you do, if you take a hit, get the heck out of that airplane." I never forgot that. So that device that we had was a sound location device, obviously. If somebody went bang, we could find it. Bingo, that instantly. And the police, I know in New Haven, got this special truck here several years ago that had the same capability. In other words, anybody fires a handgun, and if the police station has this device, they can locate the location of where that shot came from and be there within minutes. But of course, by the time the guy does what he has to do, he's gone. So anyway,
Yes.
It's an interesting life.
Well, it is, and how technology that you were on the ground floor is being used and being used effectively today. Wilfred Zinavage, Zinavage, is our guest on the program. All of your military experiences, particularly those that I mentioned, still cause you nightmares. How did they shape your perspective on life and influenced your writing?
Well, I figured people had a sort of a need to know what was going on, and it all boiled down to when we became flight techs, and we went to school, and they started talking about the computer, and quite frankly, I was guilty of putting my hand up on the second day and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. We're talking about the new language, the computer language that we suffer today with the laptops and the cell phones and all these special programs, Skype, and I can't even name them, the Netflix, there's just so many out there, and there's only certain ways you can go it. And this is designed by the companies to maintain their status quo or maintain their profit margins. So they change programs, and you as a broadcaster know what I'm talking about. It can be difficult. It's simple in the end, but this is something that we impressed upon our teachers that, we set the whole program back a week. They had to go back and teach us the basics of computers.
Just an amazing story. That story, so many in deployment by Wilfred Zinavage, our guest on the program. Website, authorwzinavage.com. Book available Amazon, wherever books are sold. Let's talk about the transition from this very active and exciting lifestyle that you were leading, 20-year military career, that adjustment to civilian life. And how did you adapt to what I will call a significant change? What was that like going from the military to civilian life?
That was not an easy transition for me. I came back here, so I inherited the farm. I had to buy the farm, and I had a home already. I saved my grandmother's life, so it was willed to me when I got old enough I could possess the 10 or 15 acres it was on, and in the house. It was a temporary home, and it became a permanent. It was a garage, and they built a apartment top of it. My son lives there now. I sold the property to him. But anyway, that's not necessary to know. But anyhow, it was not an easy. I couldn't get a job. Let's put it that way. I was too overly qualified. Nobody knew what I was talking about, and I knew the computer age was coming. So I got a job as a CPR first aid instructor, and I went around, with other team members. We became a team, and we taught CPR and first aid to schools and police departments, et cetera, et cetera. We got a couple of those of commendation. But I was looking for something that was related to what I was trained in. At 20 years of training, and I came back to the state of Connecticut, and the state says, well, you got to go to 3 months of special schooling, and you got to pay for it, by the way. GI Bill might have covered it, to learn about airplanes. I said, well, what about working on it? Well, that's another 3 months of school. So it's 6 months of schooling that, I would have had to go through, which was a nightmare. But anyway, I was offered a job, and I got turned down for a younger fellow because at the age of 35 or 36 or 37, you're considered an old man at the time.
Yes.
And I moved around from various positions. Like I said, I worked in the bank for 2 years, and I cleaned the bank up. I really did. That's another story in itself. And I've had quite a career. I'll let it go with that.
Well, yes. Now, what did you find most satisfying with all of these jobs post-military? Was there something there that you really enjoyed doing and you were satisfied in doing that job?
Well, I ended up being a nuclear security officer, United Nuclear Corporation, which is now the Mohegan Sun, the largest, third largest resort casino in the world. Okay, that was nearby, and at the time was called United Nuclear Corporation because they built nuclear submarines there. Not the engines. They built the engines.
Yes.
And I was a security officer. I had to have a clearance, and I had to have a special license to carry weapons, and And I became a member of the tactical response team, and that was another story in itself. But anyhow, after that, they shut down. They made a big mistake. It cost them, and they shut down. And the Indian tribe took it over and turned it into what it is today. It's a beautiful place, and it's incredible. You got to see the transition. So I went to work for the first casino that was started up here in Connecticut by the Indian tribe, the Pequots, the Mashantucket Pequots, called Foxwoods. It's the world's largest resort casino, and they're within 10 or 12 miles, apart. And the transitions from, there were no jobs in the area because all the mills left, and it's quite a story of what's going on. And I invited people in one of my books called Challenges to come out and see for themselves what happened when a mental institution shut down, and it happened all over the United States. They shut all the mental institutions down. So yes, being a retired veteran was not an easy task for me to adjust because here I was trying to go to school, had to support a family, yada, 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 all the usual stuff. But wow. Here I am, 84 years old, and talking to you, Rick.
Well, you have the stories, and it's amazing from that 20 illustrious years in the military and what you're able to do and struggling to find a job, that transition, a fulfilling job when you came out. The book is Deployment by Wilfred Zinavage. His website, authorwzinavage.com. Information there, and you can order Deployment and the other books there as well on his website, and that will be on our website, so you can link on directly to that. I mentioned in the beginning your work with the Vietnam Veterans of America and the American Legion. How has that helped you to cope with your military experiences by being able to help others cope with their military experiences?
Well, working with veterans organizations has been a big plus to get through the administrative end of the Veterans Administration. I am a disabled veteran. I'm 100% disabled. But what I had to go through to get that and try to convince people that had no knowledge of what people do in the military in charge of, benefits, whatever you want to call them. But I'm okay now, and it's amazing the transition that I've made and the people I've talked to and met and heard their stories. They're all authors of their own. They've had families, and many of them here in Eastern Connecticut want nothing to do with the government, and it's tough to bring them in to, get what they're entitled to.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. And it's been tough.
Well,
but here I am.
It has to be a fulfilling role in working with the veterans and telling your story and sharing that and attempting to guide them in the right direction. A couple of minutes left. It's gone by too quickly. I mentioned at the beginning, TV show co-host on public access cable. There are thousands of interviews that you've done. What's that been like, and how's that helped your communication skill?
Well, we, as the veterans, tried to start up like the Indians did. We wanted to build a casino, and we got in contact with a man who had the properties and the place to do it in. It was a very popular spot, infield track, and that was the only place left at the time for people to gamble and have a good time. So we wanted to build a casino. Well, that got shot down because the Indians were a bit in competition. They didn't want competition. So the Pequots started out with a high stakes bingo. And we decided, well, if they could do it, why can't we? Well, we were told at the highest levels, we got the green light. We had a millionaire, we had lawyers, we had meetings, yada, yada, yada. We had veterans working with us. There were, and we were told we got the green light. And we spent a whole week cleaning the place up and get it ready for a crowd. And guess what? The commissioner at the time calls us and says, no, you guys can't do that. And let me tell you, the organization fell apart after that. A lot of disgust, a lot of hurt people, and a lot of wasted effort. So that was our attempt at trying to get money to come in to help the vets. And that was one, experience that I had. And as far as that, at the time, we got on public cable access and I became a co-host. And for 5 years, I was a co-host, and we had live talk shows much like you're doing. And we had an audience, it measured at one time, of 50,000 people. And this was a live show, unrehearsed. And the only tip I can give you, Rick, in anything you do, is we found out the hard way that, you might offend some people. Your guest may say something that somebody takes offense to.
Yes.
And you're going to get loaded with phone calls and they're going to threaten to sue you and all that. But I came up with the idea after that happened to us. I'm in Connecticut. We had a lawyer call from a lawyer in Pennsylvania. They're going to sue us for saying, doing something. And so the next week I got smart and I held up a copy of the Constitution. It's a little small booklet. I says, this contains, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. It's a little booklet. I held it up before every show. I said, this gives us the right to speak freely. Okay? And it caught on. People enjoyed that. It loosened people up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But
yes.
Everything we do today is monitored and recorded, and I know it is. And any other questions?
Well, that's such a fascinating career. I want to ask one, and we've got just a few seconds left, but I have to ask about this. I see that you are an inventor, invented WET, W-E-T, weather evaluation tool, which may tame tornadoes and hurricanes. Briefly, is that still active? Is this a project you're working on now?
Well, I had what they called a provisional patent, which was good for a year. That's all I could afford. I'm not a rich man, make that perfectly clear. And guess what? Nobody nibbled. But I found out there was a man in Canada who got a $2 million grant to try to figure out how to extract the energy from a tornado. You have a spinning vortex. Can you turn it into electricity? That's what he got his $2 million for. And all I said was, this device that I give you will show you how a tornado works, and it'll calm it down, okay? And that'll reduce the damages. But I said I used the word tame because you don't want to get rid of the energy exchange. You need the energy exchange. That's what keeps us alive, okay? It just eliminates, it's just like taming a wild animal. We've tamed horses, we've tamed dogs,
Yes.
We just tamed that tornado down. Or even maybe hurricanes. You can tame them down, You're going to get the rain, you're going to get the winds, you're going to get everything except the high velocity winds. And, you can't slow the rain down. What goes up must come down. So,
yes, as someone who lives in Florida, I wish you the best on this project, and hopefully it catches on and does something. It would be a great benefit to all of us. It's such
what they can do now is take the patent and copy it, and you'll probably see since I'm talking to you, and if you broadcast this, I'll tell you right now, within 6 months, somebody's going to come out with a way to tame the tornadoes. And all I've done was planted the seed.
That's just amazing how
tamed. And I use the word tame again because I do not want to mess with Mother Nature, because Mother Nature will react.
That's right. There's a price to pay for doing that. This has been such a fascinating conversation with Wilfred Zinavage, Zinavage. His website is authorwzinavage.com. I'd like to thank litprime.com for arranging our conversation today. His book, Deployment, available wherever books are sold. All of his books you'll find on his website, authorwzinavage.com.
Can I interrupt you there just momentarily?
Yes, certainly.
I don't know what's going to happen if you put the word author in front of it. My website is wzinavage.com.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not being funny here, but I don't know, the computer is very sensitive. People are sensitive, and they put down author, and they don't get to me.
Well,
Okay.
I tell you, if it doesn't work,
W-
just put down wzinavage.com.
And that was one of the principles when we got involved with the computerized world. And when we first went to class, as I started to tell you, was the fact that we had to tell them the KISS principle, keep it simple. and we grew it to, these people were so educated and so insulting. Well, we came right back at them and said, we'll call it the KISS principle, KISS. And they said, well, what does the second S mean? It means keep it simple, stupid.
That says it all. A great way, a great thought to end our program with today. So we think
now,
author...
one more step.
Yeah, sure.
And then we come up with another rule. It was called GIGO, GIGO. And now they're talking about artificial intelligence. It is what it is trained to be. In other words, if you're a programmer, you can put garbage in, make that thing, whatever it is, do whatever you want it to do, and produce garbage out whenever you want it to. So we call it the garbage in equals garbage out. And it's when you start talking about artificial intelligence, they've got to be very careful. That's it. Thank you.
So much information in this program today. We talk about the early career during the Cold War. We talked about what's happened to Wilfred afterwards, and I love his observations. We'll do another program with Wilfred just talking about philosophy. I'd love to have so many more conversations and topics with Wilfred. Wilfred Zinavage, our guest on the program. Wilfred, thank you so much for being with us. Hopefully this is part one. It was an enjoyment to have you with us.
Thank you.
It is our pleasure. Wilfred Zinavage, Zinavage. Information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And you're listening to This Week in America. Back after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, Associate Producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, Segment Producer. Ben Watson, Webmaster. Otto Bechet, Director of Engineering and TV Production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, Executive Producer of This Week in America.